I'll say that was Chrysoula Malogianni from Old Dominion University, who's their chief digital experience officer. And we had a great conversation about blah, blah, blah.
Digital transformation, though, is not just about technology adoption. I think digital transformation is about redesigning the whole student experience to remove friction, to increase clarity, to accelerate outcomes. You have to think of that as a system. Higher ed institutions are systems. You cannot just talk about digital transformation for the student experience and think of technology that touches the student alone. You have to think of how I'm going to really transform the operational model of the institution and how I'm going to transform the digital experience for students, faculty, and staff. It is a more holistic model through all the functions of the university, teaching and learning, research, but also operations.
That was Chrysoula Malogianni, the chief digital experience officer at Old Dominion University. We had a great conversation about the importance of defining student success holistically, considering the full end-to-end experience. We talked through how digital transformation is not just overlaying new technologies like AI on your existing practices, but really it's about using them to catalyze their improvement and how you need to think through adoption, operations, redesign processes, and have the metrics to measure it all so you can continuously improve and adapt. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Connected College Podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Felix. I've helped more than 100 colleges and universities change what they offer, how they operate, and the way they're organized to enable student success. Join me for insightful interviews with higher ed innovators sharing the stories, stats, and strategies to create better connected colleges and universities. Welcome, Chrysa. I'm so excited about our conversation on the role of digital transformation for student success.
Thank you for having me. I'm also excited. This is a topic that I am very passionate about. Student success is what we do, what we strive for, what we aim constantly in higher education.
And digital transformation is simple and easy, and we could probably figure it all out in the next half an hour or so, I bet.
It's absolutely not. It's not simple, it's not easy, but it's absolutely necessary.
That's true. That's true. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in higher ed and what you're up to today.
I have a quite an interesting story here. I was born and raised in Greece. I did all my traditional school in Greece and even college. I come from a rather impoverished educational environment. When I graduated high school from my specific municipality, I was the only one from my graduating class to go into college, which was like, to this day, I think my biggest accomplishment. And that shows exactly how what that means from somebody coming from my environment. I didn't have anybody in my family, extended family, attend college, no point of reference. I knew I wanted to study. I knew I wanted to go to college. I didn't know what I want to be when I grow up, but I knew that my education journey wouldn't have stopped in high school and with my high school graduation. So I went to School of Education and then I completed my Greek ptυχίο is the name, which the equivalent is bachelor's and master's, because I took the extra coursework and so on. So it was in early childhood education and the additional course in curriculum and instruction, pedagogy, practically. I worked a few years as a grade school teacher, and then I realized that was not for me. I went to the industry in training and development very quickly.
Interesting.
Yes, within 2 years, I was a director of that field in a rather large company, corporate world, and I had to work a lot with the tech vendors. Training and development includes a lot of coordination with tech vendors because you need to include a portfolio on how you're going to train employees on new tools. Life happened, many things happened, and by late 20s, I decided to move to the United States, and this is where I took a leap of faith and I went to education and technology. This is where I found my passion. I saw a significant opportunity for working in this intersection between teaching and learning cognition and technology. And it's funny because part of my portfolio now is leading AI initiatives across my organization. And I say, I studied that way before it was like trending, the interplay of cognition and technology. And then I continued with my PhD in instructional design and technology, studied even harder that diffusion and adoption of technology, especially in higher education, since that was my passion. And not for the sake of technology, but what the impact could be for the actual learning education journey and so on. And since day one of my tenure as a student at the United States, I started working in higher education here as an instructional technologist, instructional designer. And then I got to establish fully online, fully digital programs from scratch in the different institutions, which means that you have to really take a deep look into the digital ecosystem. Looking at the digital ecosystems, you have the first realization that educational technology was not originally designed, developed, and continuously evolved with the best of both worlds. It was great technology that tried to just work as an overlay of existing practices that were developed without the use of technology, without taking that into consideration. So it was like stretching existing teaching and learning practices and even institutional practices and processes, existing processes, in just tools. The lift and shift of these processes with technology is not going to optimize the experience for any stakeholder in higher ed. Some cases, it might actually have the opposite result. It might automate bad processes, so we might end up having
Right.
biggest.
You might scale up your failures.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Um,
So
what
this is the short intro how I end up where I am.
it's a great story, and I want to go back to you're the only student in your school going to college in Greece, like dreaming big. Was there like a book? Was there a hero? Was there a movie? What gave you the idea? What emboldened you to dream big?
I'm so glad you asked this question because it was not a movie or a hero or anything like that. But my mother is one of the most intelligent people I had met at the time. And she always wanted to pursue education. She was not allowed to continue. So when she graduated elementary school, she was not allowed to continue to middle school.
Wow.
Yeah, back then, Greece in the early 60s. And when it was, she was at the age of continuing with middle school. She had five older brothers, and she was supposed to stay home and help with that instead of going to school. So I saw her reading books on her own and trying her best without formal education. And nobody, if you meet her and you have a conversation with her, you wouldn't believe that this woman is just an elementary school graduate. And she did everything on her own. So I think that she instilled this passion about education in me.
I was also intrigued. You were talking about you're studying the relationship between technology and cognition. What were some of the things that surprised you when you're in grad school for that or diving into instructional design about how technology shapes thinking or
At,
reshapes?
at that point, I did have somebody that I worked with, a faculty member professor, that really, he's the reason that I decided to go to the doctoral program, to the PhD, because I had started with a master's and with the first semester, and that was Dr. Ant Spiro, that he had developed the cognitive flexibility theory, that we have a schema of the moment. It was this affordance of the cognition of the moment and how we can evolve. Our brain has limited capacity, working capacity. It's how many things we can process at a time. So with technology, we can expand this capacity. Now, for example, with AI, I think that how we can expand, how we can evolve as thinking, our thinking as human beings, our brain, and so on. And thank God the technology keeps evolving. So it keeps giving us more affordances, more opportunities.
Nice. Well, and earlier you were saying student success is why we're here. I would love to hear your definition of student success.
It is simple. It is simple, right? What is the main reason of higher education to exist? Why did we start? Why we keep existing? It's about educating, not providing degrees, providing education. The goal is every student that comes through our door, that starts in our institution, to provide everything they need. So at the end of their journey, no matter when that is, they're gonna finish not just with a degree, with all the skills, knowledge, and the support that they needed. So it's not about, okay, I have a bachelor's or a master's or a PhD in this. It's like, I have the knowledge, I acquired the skill that this institution promised me, and I'm ready to enter the workforce or the next step or whatever their goals and dreams are. So the student success is like we provide to them everything. And that's not just the access to experts and content and context, is supports, systems, and additional skills, soft, hard, and everything. It's the subject matter expertise, the critical thinking, the leadership, and the realization that learning doesn't stop at the end of that journey.
Yeah, it sounds like you look at it through the learning and development lens, like back to your roots. It's about developing students so they have knowledge, skills, abilities, and creating the systems and the supports and the community that make that possible.
But Elliot, if you think about it, most students don't drop college because of what happened in one course or one classroom, or even if they fail in one course or two or three, it's not because of the relationship in this course with this professor and so on. Of course, it plays a role, but it's never just that. Students drop because of everything else that they might be happening in their life or in their school, in their college, and they don't get the appropriate, the needed support, the time they needed, the format they needed, the way they needed to be able to really move forward with their educational journey. And student success is much bigger than what is happening in one course or even in all the courses.
I'm with you on that. And I like that holistic approach and the recognition that it's not just what happens in the classroom, it's everything around it. It's belonging, it's support, it's community, it's finance. What role can technology play in enabling that success? We're talking about digital transformation. What's the role of technology in enabling student success, and how does it need to transform?
Technology is everywhere, obviously, and it's not going anywhere, period. So we would be doing a disservice to all of our students if we tried to exclude technology from those conversations. So at the same time, it's so integrated into everything we do, not just in higher ed, and it should be integrated, because how can you prepare students and talk about student success if you don't prepare them for the workforce needs? And without technology, you really don't prepare them. And technology is not just, hey, you need to have technology as a tool, is a content, a concept, a context. Technology is there. Digital transformation, though, is not just about technology adoption. I think digital transformation is about redesigning the whole student experience to remove friction, to increase clarity, to accelerate outcomes. You have to think of that as a system. Higher ed institutions are systems. You cannot just talk about digital transformation for the student experience and think of technology that touches the student alone. You have to think of how I'm going to really transform the operational model of the institution and how I'm going to transform the digital experience for students, faculty, and staff. It is a more holistic model through all the functions of the university: teaching and learning, research, but also operations.
Yeah, they're all connected. Increase clarity, reduce friction, and accelerate outcomes is a really nice way of putting it. What's some of the friction that you're working on reducing or that you've already reduced?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. This is a friction that we have tried to reduce across all three populations, and it's common. It's around the full digital ecosystem, right?
Hmm.
Systems that they don't talk to each other, duplication of systems, redundancy of effort, and so on. And it's a win-win situation for all, because you don't have the student going through multiple different technologies
Hmm.
to achieve the same outcomes. You work better together, and think about that. Like, student success overall is not achieved through isolated interventions. So why would we have isolated systems? The improvement of the digital experience for all stakeholders is the result of a connected intentional ecosystem where every touch point, either academic, operational, and experiential, works together to support the student.
I hear you on that. And the redundancy and the interoperability, I've worked with so many campuses on their technology service model or their support model. And inevitably, we'll do a workshop where we have a post-its on the wall or on a Miro board, and each one is a system.
Yeah.
And I have yet to facilitate one of those workshops where the CIO or someone isn't saying, this is too much. And those two things seem really similar. Inevitably, people realize there are redundancy, there isn't that clarity, there isn't the interoperability you're talking about.
We have started this work. It's great to talk to you about digital transformation and the digital ecosystem. And we start with the goal that, okay, student success must be designed as end-to-end experience from recruitment, from the very, very early stages when somebody's looking, what does ODU have to offer me? So we start from there to graduation and beyond, and every step needs to feel very connected. And from admissions to advising to teaching and learning, what is happening in the classroom, financial aid, financial services, all that, career pathways, they cannot operate in silos, right? So at the same time, there are so many different systems that do each of these parts, or some of them like multiple together. So what we did, we were not different than other institutions that had multiple systems. Every little unit or big unit had one or two or three or four systems, some of them doing something similar, some of them doing something totally different. So we started a few years ago with a technology purge, right? We called it the Unified Technology project, but
You did some kind of audit or whatever, and then
yes, it was a very hard, time-consuming effort to really. You start with what you actually have, what everything does, but you don't stop there, because if you stop there, you might see that, oh, you're gonna find yourself feeling that you have to keep most of these things because all of these things do something. They serve a purpose.
For someone, who's
Yeah.
attached to them or
You
whatever.
look at the first redundancies, the first filter is the easy one because you see, oh, you do this and you do this. Okay, let's pick the best one. But there is a second layer. If you just see that first, like a superficial level, you might feel that you need to keep more. But when you see that, what are the opportunities? How many of these processes can change and they're going to be better if they change because of what technology really can provide, can afford now. So you cannot just lift and shift. You have to look at deeper in the processes and see how I'm going to update those processes with the student experience in mind, with everybody's experience in mind, because we want to make sure that students, faculty, and staff have a much better experience so they can focus on what they actually need to do. We want the faculty to focus on teaching and learning, the researchers on research, the advisors into maintaining this close relationship with the students. So technology is there to serve them and allow them to focus on their work. So some of the processes need to change. And the next biggest project that we are establishing as a practice is the enterprise architecture. Again, with the system thinking to continuously evaluate adoption and diffusion of any technology and how it impacts all the different stakeholders. So we have started that about a year now, and we're moving to the next step of full implementation as a practice, as ongoing continuous practice.
And I'm curious how that practice is going. You talked about greater clarity, less friction, accelerated outcomes. Are those your metrics? How are you measuring the digital transformation, the digital experience? What does your dashboard look like?
Yeah, actually, we do measure like that. We do measure efficiencies, automations, and redundancies, the systems. But what we have for each and every project under digital transformation, and some of them, like they are the traditional digital transformation process, even updating 180 classrooms. Like we're not just talking about systems level and this stuff. We are transforming the online portfolio with 8-week accelerated programs. The on-campus with, again, those 180 classrooms with additional XR labs and so on. So in everything, We have the classic technology metrics that somebody might expect, the ones you mentioned, but we also have student outcomes. This is where we are very intentional, is because if it doesn't serve the main goal, like we mentioned earlier, like student success, then what are we doing? We have DFW rates, student evaluation surveys, student faculty and staff satisfaction surveys. So we don't have just the classic numbers, metrics. And this is something that we intentionally did. And I know that many people, it would be much easier to stay in the numbers of efficiencies. It's very easy to justify, oh my God, look how much faster we work there, how much time we gained there, efficiencies. But did we really serve the target populations, the stakeholders? So we are utilizing all these metrics as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not just efficiency, but it's also like effectiveness and experience.
Yes.
And you're combining those three together.
It's not just the systems. It's not about implementing tools, more tools. Sometimes actually it's less tools. It's about creating that seamless flow of data, insights, experiences across all the different areas, across all the platforms, across teaching and learning, across research, across operations. So students, faculty, and staff don't have to navigate complexity on their own.
And it strikes me that in a way, digital transformation is never done, right? Because it's always changing and there are new technologies and those have to be integrated and old ones have to be sunset and needs change. So can you talk a little bit about how you see DX changing into the future and your advice for folks to adapt to that change? I'm assuming AI is part of this.
Yeah, I mean, like, especially for me, I have to tell you, last week alone, I had 4 talks about AI. So AI is part of everything. Even for our digital transformation, AI sits at the center of it because it's here. It's powerful, it's everywhere. And like I said, we need to prepare all of our stakeholders, not just students, but students most of all, for this AI-enabled world. But you're right, digital transformation is not episodic. It's a continuous practice. You always have to, with any technology. AI actually brought the need, I think, to more people and quicker than anybody else has realized. But it is at the same standards and frameworks around adoption and diffusion of any technology, really. So we need to really understand that the adoption and diffusion of technology as practice and digital transformation is not new. What is new is what is the technology, which is AI now, or more than.
Or maybe the pace, the pace of adoption.
But yeah, we've had some really quick pace adoption. I remember, I'm gonna really show my age now. I remember a word before Google, and now Google is a verb. Google.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I didn't use Google randomly because it became a verb, and we have studied that, and we also saw how people reacted early on, especially in higher ed, when they thought that higher ed is going to become irrelevant because now everybody can search and find content and so on. And we had to adapt and adjust and deal with that. So now with AI, I think that we need to be we need to do better. We need to learn from those mistakes that we did. And I think it's time that we move from reactiveness, reactive support, to proactive design. So proactively design about this ongoing practice of digital transformation. This is how you're gonna be able to maintain.
The Google thing is such a good analogy because it reminds me, I do a lot of work in library transformation, looking at their spaces and services and systems and staffing and the strategy that drives that. And a few weeks ago, I wrote, what can we learn as we think about AI? What can we learn from how libraries have transformed? And I think because there was a time when everyone said the sky is falling, no one's going to go to a library, you can get everything you need. But actually, if you look at visitation data, libraries are the busiest they've ever been.
Right.
And the great thing about the internet is it forced libraries to think about what their real value was. And it wasn't just the information, it was also the people, it was the services, it was the community, it was the technology. And I think if there's one thing we should be doing as we're thinking about the future in AI, it's thinking about what our value is.
Where's our product?
Yeah.
What is our really product, our value proposition, the return on investment, and so on? And this is not just with Google and the libraries. I think that AI is the real post-Gutenberg revolution. I think this impact is as big because Gutenberg, the typography and so on, is what democratized education, learning, and access to all that, to knowledge and content. And now with AI, we democratize that even more, right? So it's about what is our product. Access to content exists. So actually, I think it's a great opportunity to do education even better, to really
Yeah.
advance human cognition, to advance teaching and learning, to advance what we learn, how we learn, and how we can really go to that next level that we had to really spend time in very low level cognitive functions that we can now put,
Offload.
yes,
Yeah.
more to AI, to technology, and then really move forward and so on. So it's not about replacing us, but it's forcing us to really reevaluate our product and our offerings. And I hope that it's going to become a constant practice. This is the practice, the constant evaluation of what we're offering. Is this the best product that we can offer? How we can make it even better, more relevant to real life, more relevant to workforce, more relevant to the actual target population, our students, our learners. And this way, higher education becomes like this lifelong learning journey, lifelong educational journey. And it should, because if we're talking about evolution of technology, we're gonna have to talk about upskilling and reskilling constantly, right? So, okay, where is our offering there? How we are making sure we have this ongoing relationship with anybody that steps into our university to make sure we support them throughout their life as learners. So we cannot be talking about entrance to the university, one entry point and one exit point. We're going to have to talk about multiple entry points and multiple exit points. So it's not
Right.
students can come, oh, I go to college after high school, 4 years, I graduate, maybe graduate school is no. I have some experience, I go, I get some certificates, I keep building on them, stackability, mobility, and so on. And technology to support this. Actually, this is it. Technology can support a model like this.
Absolutely. This is really inspiring stuff. And thinking about what our value is, what our product is, and what that experience is like now and into the future, I think is such important and inspiring stuff. And I appreciate all your insights today. Thank you, Chrysa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation so much. I'm very passionate about this work. So I can talk about this for hours, but I appreciate your questions really reminded me why I am very excited about this work.
It's important stuff. And I'm glad we're all working toward this and creating the greater clarity and the reducing the friction and accelerating the outcomes and using technology to do it. That sounds pretty good to me.
Thank you for hosting a podcast about student success. We should never forget that. This is why we are here.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening to the Connected College podcast. Go to elliottfelix.com for more information about my book, The Connected College, articles I've written, and talks I've given. There's also tools you can download, information on upcoming events, and information on booking me to speak at your institution or organization. Please support the podcast by rating it and reviewing it wherever you're listening. Let's create connected colleges where all students succeed.